Um, and this is a very interesting topic, and there's all kinds of hysteria. There's a lot of misinformation that's going on about the trucker protest in Canada, and it's breaking down right wing, left wing, and I kind of have a more nuanced position on this whole thing that I want to share with you. But let me just tee it up. So the way that I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, feel free to type them into the chat, is that the truckers are protesting a vaccine mandate that is required to cross the border between Canada and the United States. So that's the thing that they're protesting. And, I'm generally sympathetic with truckers. I told you the stories of my stepfather was a truck driver, and I was raised around semi trucks. We had a Kenworth, and we later had a Peterbilt. And my stepfather, he would drive all over California. And when I was younger, when I was probably too young to stay home during the summer months, I would go to work with my stepfather in the truck, and we drive all over the place. So I've been around trucks a lot. So I'm generally sympathetic to these guys. And if you want to learn more about my history of trucking, I have a podcast episode that I released about, I don't know, it was like 6 months ago. And it was all about trucker stories. So I invite you to go back to that. I can tell you about some of my crazy adventures. But you see, like, if you watch Fox News, or you tune into some other sort of right wing perspective, you get a very different message than when you go and visit more left wing people. They kind of see it through a different lens. And the right wing people generally are loving this protest. They're excited, and they're all, yeah, you way to go, truckers. And Trump is pumping them up, right? And the whole MAGA crew is pumping them up. And they feel like they're really making their point, that this is about freedom, and this is about fighting against the government and their mandate on truckers. And they're sort of gleefully enjoying all of the disruption that this is creating. And now more people are getting involved, and it's getting more exposure. And now it's getting to be something more than just the truckers. And the truckers are honking their horns and creating, they're just getting a lot of attention, and they're just loving it. All the right wingers are just loving this. Now, on the other side, you see the left wingers, and they are looking at this completely different. I mean, the left wingers are just outraged by the chaos and all of these people that are descending into their cities, like in Ottawa, because that's where all the truckers were going in Canada. They were going to Ottawa for this rally. And at first they start saying, these guys are idiots. They're not vaccinated. And a lot of the left wingers think that this is a protest against the vaccine. But it's not. It's a protest against the mandate for the vaccine. Those are very different things. And that's kind of how I line up. I'm very pro-vaccine, but I'm very anti-mandate. And I think that's a position that is logically consistent with the whole idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm pro-vaccine because I want to manage my life. I want to maximize my health. I want to protect myself to the best ability that I can. That's why I take a vaccine. And it's science after all. But at the same time, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the liberty part is interesting too, because other people, for whatever reason, don't want to take the vaccine. And to me, that's a foolish decision, but you should have the choice to make that decision, especially now that the vaccines are widely available. And we've learned a lot more about the vaccine. And I'm thinking, if you don't want to take the vaccine, well, really, the biggest risk to anyone is to you for not taking the vaccine, because the vaccine is ultimately to protect yourself from a more serious illness, to protect yourself from serious hospitalization, and to protect yourself from dying. So that's why I find this whole thing interesting, because there is a nuanced position between the two. But the left wingers are also getting more outraged because they see now all these other groups are descending. All the protesters, the MAGA people are coming in, and so now you start hearing all these accusations that all these protesters, they're racist, they're bigots, it's QAnon, it's all of this. And I don't know, it might be. I don't know if it is or not, but you can see how it's getting distorted and the narrative is very different when you look at left wing versus right wing media. Um, and then, never mind the fact that a lot of the left wingers, and especially, in Canada, are accusing, some of these protesters of being racist. But at the same time, Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada was there's photographic evidence of him in blackface when he was younger. It's shocking to me that he is still the Prime Minister of Canada when there's evidence of him in blackface. Usually that is a instant cancel, in today's cancel culture. But there's all so much hypocrisy in all this. And then of course, there's now there's discussion that maybe they're going to have another trucker rally in the United States, and they're getting fired up for that. People here in America, some are happy, some are worried, and then I guess the truckers, they have like a GoFundMe and they raised $10 million, but then GoFundMe took the money off the table. Some people are thinking they're operating at the direction of the government, and then in fact this is the government by proxy interfering in protesting. So it's just a lot of crazy tangents to this whole thing. So here's my take on this that I think is important. Number one is I support the truckers' point. The truckers' point is that they don't want to have a mandate for the vaccine. Now, granted, 90% of the truckers are vaccinated. So, they understand that sort of nuanced position. They're 90% of them are pro-vaccine, but they're anti-mandate. So I support the idea that my life, my body, my choice, right? And I'm consistent on that across the board, on abortion, on drugs, on vaccines. Her body, her choice; his body, his choice. So I think they've got a righteous point there. But this is where it all goes sideways for the right wingers. They call this thing, this trucker protest, this blockade. I don't know, what do you call it? They're calling it the Freedom Convoy. This is where this drives me bananas. So it's basically freedom for me, but not for thee. It's this distorted version of freedom where they want freedom for themselves. They don't want anyone to tell them what in the hell they can do, but they don't care about the freedom of other people. And I think this is a very important point to understand, because the protesters, what they're doing, these trucks, they're blocking roads, they're blocking access to borders as well. I mean, let me see if I can find the quote in this article. It was very interesting. So where is it? Yeah. So the truck drivers are blocking traffic on the Ambassador Bridge, a key crossing between Windsor, Ontario and Detroit. So they call it, again, the Freedom Convoy. But by blocking access to these roads and bridges, by creating all of this chaos, they are ultimately violating the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of other people. They're blocking their ability to move, to travel, to do business. So they're just being assholes about this. And that's the thing that just tweaks me. Because if you support freedom, if you support liberty, you should be supporting liberty for everybody, not just you. So, there's a place for a protest. I get it. Protesting is very important, but you can't do it at the expense of other people. And to me, it's nuts. I mean, here's Pete Neild on the live stream. He says, I, as you, support the right to protest, but not to the point where others uninvolved are harmed. Shipments to the populace is being blocked. Harm. Pete, you're absolutely right. In a world with free trade, we shouldn't have people interrupting people's ability to do trade. Now, granted, the truckers have a right to protest. The truckers have a right, if they choose, to not deliver the goods that they have. But in doing so, they end up undermining their own cause and really losing some of the sympathy, because they end up pissing off people that could otherwise be aligned with them. So, but when you start blocking access to roads and to bridges And we saw that with the BLM protests where they would like block a freeway, and the protesters felt so energized that they were actually making a big difference, that they were, causing a disruption, causing chaos, so they would get attention. But you end up, again, violating the rights of other people. We see this here in my hometown of Poway. I've talked about the Poway protesters that happen here every Sunday. This has been going on for years, but it really ramped up in the world of Trump, where they originally, gosh, they used to be left-wing protesters that were there protesting against George W. Bush and the Iraq War. And then eventually it turned into an anti-Trump corner. And then the Trump people showed up on the other corner, and it's become this huge rally point, this flashpoint. There's been moments of violence on this street corner here in my hometown of Poway. But the some of the Trump people, you'll see them hold signs that say freedom, but on the other, there'll be a sign right next to it that'll say deport illegals. You're thinking, this doesn't make sense. Again, it's freedom for me, but not for thee. And this always just makes me go crazy, because when you go back to the Declaration of Independence, the founding document of the United States of America that set up the moral cause, the higher purpose of what America was all about, was that we're all created equal. Okay. And which means we all have equal rights, and we are all have the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Actually, they said we have unalienable rights, rights that can't be taken away, that were provided by, I think in the Declaration, I think it was from the Creator or from God, but a lot of people can see it as coming really from nature, or really objectively, you can witness it, in terms of, we're all here, we own our lives, and we're here to pursue our life, to live our life, to flourish in our life. We all have the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's not just Americans. It says all men are created equal. Now, back then in 1776, all men meant all humans, right? Kind of like when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, and this is one step for man. And what was that line? I mean, he wasn't only talking about people with male genitalia, he was talking about humans. So all men are created equal, and we all have the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's really important to understand that, sure, you want freedom for yourself, but you have to understand that the other guy has rights too. And I think this is where the truckers go wrong. I think they've got the right point that the mandates are heavy-handed. I mean, and frankly, they're truck drivers. They're in a cab, in a truck. It's not like they're, walking in a mall surrounded by 1,000 people. I mean, these guys are the ultimate social distancers. So it's stupid that there's a mandate on truckers. I mean, of all professions, that's the most idiotic profession, to assign a mandate for a vaccine. Plus, truck drivers, they tend to be independent guys that are kind of, proud to drive the truck, and they're the kind of guys that don't like to be told what to do. So you knew you're kind of poking the bear there, but still, it just makes no sense that they should be given a mandate. But those truckers all have to understand that other people have rights too. And when you're an asshole blocking the road, you're violating the rights of other people to live their life freely. And the government has a proper role here, and that is to unclog those roads and those bridges, and arrest people that are doing that sort of thing, because the role of government should be to secure our rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, Canada, I know, is a whole different thing, and they've got different rules, but ultimately, that's what this should be about. Now, there's all kinds of other crazy stuff going on. Like, I was reading here, and I think I saw a photo of this, that the Ottawa police made several arrests of people, including seizing fuel from some protesters. So I think people had like these gas cans, maybe it was filled with diesel, to take to the truckers so they can keep idling their truck, because it's probably cold up there, and to keep it going. So I don't know. Again, I love the right to protest. I'm all about it. I think they've got a great point about mandates, about vaccine mandates. But it's they're just taking the wrong approach here. And they're, in my opinion, they're undermining what freedom is really all about. And that's the irony. They call themselves the Freedom Convoy, but by doing it, they want to harm the freedom of other people. Just crazy.